Hi guys, it's Kobe here, and in today's video we are going to talk about the text object in Cinema 4D. The text object used to be called the MoText because it was part of the Mograph menu in Cinema 4D in here. So you can see I have a text which I've typed in the text object in here, so I can actually show you just a text object I've typed in here, and I've increased the depth to like 1000 just to get it to go wide, and I've actually added my textures using Redshift, and all I've done is I've added the formula effector, so you can see the effector is affecting it. So if I should hit play, you can see the formula effector is affecting it. So just to show you that it's a Mograph object and it can be straightly affected by the effectors and stuff like that. And I've also changed just the camera focal length to get it to that wide angle for it to get you that close zoom look. So let's get into our text object and see how it works. So initially it used to be in the Mograph menu, and now in recent versions it was moved into our into the object tab in object menu here, and later it's have its own separate menu in here. So let's go ahead and create our text object. So we create our text objects, and we will come to our viewport and see what happens. So this is our text object, and then you come to its attribute manager, you can see we have depth, and that's where we control the thickness of our text. And we have subdivision as well. So the subdivision, I'll change the display to garage shading so that we see what's going. You can see in here with the depth, everything is very clean. But immediately we start adding subdivision, you can see now it's giving us all these segments in there, and that can be very helpful when you are using it along with some deformers and stuff to get some particular effects. So this is where you change your text. So I'll type in pixel. Right, this is where you change your text, and the font is where you change your font. So I can come in here by clicking on the font, and you can see we have all these fonts down, so you can choose the kind of font we want. I can see maybe this particular font, and you can see down here if it has other like fonts, shapes, you can actually, so you can change it to italic and stuff like that. So let me probably bring it back to this particular font. So now that's basically the next is we have the alignment, and now you can see it's left aligned. So everything I type, if I add, let's see, affair to it, you can see it continues from there. It aligns right from the left, right. So we can set it to middle, and now either from the right as well, but I will leave it in the middle for now. And this is where you can control the height of your text, and this is for the horizontal spacing, so sort of moves every individual letter away. And this is for vertical spacing. So for instance, if I had I'll copy this for Control C, come down to Control V, and now you can see we have two lines, right? So this is where you use to control the vertical spacing of our text object. That's when you have a lot of the text in there. The next down is we have the kerning. So if I check it, it gives every individual its own sort of attributes or properties for us to manipulate. So if I click on, say, the E, right, now we can scale it, we can move it, and all sort of things that we can do to it. So for instance, if I select the E itself, I can move it, and you can see everything after the E will follow, will align with the E and move. And this is good for kerning your text. So for instance, I don't like the way the F is too away from the E. I can select it and move it a bit closer so that it will look like it's one object and stuff like that. I won't do that. Aside from the moving and stuff like that, you can scale it. So you see we have this here, you can scale it uniformly. You can see now the E is small. You can move it up or down the way we want it, and you can even scale it on uniformly. So you can see we are scaling it wide. So that's basically what the kerning gives us. So I uncheck it, and now I come down. It's the adaptives in here is basically so if I actually come to the shape, you can see in here for instance with the P, let me actually leave just the P, right? And see where there's so much segment in here, and because there is a curve, so it calculates and gives us the points that we need to actually give us a smooth curve. And when it's a straight line, where is it? Where there is a straight line, it just gives us a straight line, no any segment or no point in here. But immediately we change it to something like a natural, you can see now it's creating segments in here. That's basically it's giving us some points to connect. So that's how it's creating. So the adaptive can be useful when you are using it for something simple, just the text on its own. But if you be affecting it with deformers and stuff, then it means you have to give it a bit more segments in there. So you might not have to use one of other ones apart from the adaptive, which is you can also use uniform, and you can see uniform is giving us even distribution of points in here, and that's how come it's not getting it now. So you see the P is not well shaped, so it means you have to come into the numbers and increase the numbers to actually get it, and that becomes very dense. So if you don't need it, you don't have to do that. You have also subdivision, which you can also use angles to define the subdivisions, right? So let's go to the next tab, which is the cap, and this is where you basically shape our text. So with the P like this, for instance, now everything we like the way it looks, even though the text is one object, it's kind of separated. So this is the face, and that's called the caps, and in here like the middle, right? So we can simply see we don't want the cap from in front of the text, and you can see it's taking off the cap, so you can take the two out and you don't have any cap in here. Let's bring it back, and now you come down. This is where our edges is very sharp, so we can round our edges. Now it's set to rounding, and you can see you can add our rounding in here. And the intermediate point, for instance, let me actually come back to object, and I'll take off this one for now. I don't want all these subdivisions. I'll set this one to adaptive, and now let's go back so that we see what's happening here. So you can see that in the caps the rounding is set to 5, but when you come down here the segment of the cap is set to 3. So that's the 3 steps in here. So if I increase it, you can it gets smoother. But if I set it to 1, you can see now it looks like some sort of a chiseled edge, right, for the rounding. That's what, and this is the depths, how you can actually control the depth of the rounding, right? So let's add this segment back to it, probably increase it to like 5. And now we can also extend the shape, so you can see it's staying within, it's not trying to move away, it's trying to stay within the text space. So if you want to move it out, you can actually enable extend shape, and now you can see it changes. But now when we start moving the height, you can see now you can actually extend the caps and the rounding to how far you want it. You can even push it inside, and you can come up with a lot of interesting looking text and stuff like that. Let's uncheck this one and let it set back to default. We have other like curves and stuff like that, so I can choose curves here, and now we can use the curve to shape how we want our rounding or the edge to be like. So you can use the curve to shape it and stuff like that. I can hold control to do some weird stuff in here to see, wow, you know. So that's basically, can use the curve also to shape it as well. And you can use solid. This one is just a plane, and that plus the extend can actually do something other interesting stuff. So I'll uncheck the step and the extend, and I'll come to the next one, which is step, and that one gives us, you know, like its name says, steps and stuff like that. And that also determined by the segments. So if I reduce the segment to or just 1, you can see you have just 1 step, and if I increase it to 2, you have the same thing, another step. So that's the factor stuff about the caps as well. In here, the bevel, when you check the bevel out, so everything we do, let me actually set it back to round. You can see if we start pushing the size, now you see the text is getting bigger because now it's moving aside the frames of the text. So that's what the bevel outside goes. So now it pushes the edges outside, right? And now avoid self intersection. So for instance, with this one, if I come in here and I push, like move the size to this point, you can see even though I've moved past, when it gets to where the two lines meet, let me go back a bit, see where the two lines meet, it connects, and now it gives some sort of chiseled like looking edge, right? So if I should bring this back, you can see now we have some chisel looking edge kind of object. But immediately we take off avoid self intersection. Now you can see it goes past each other, so now it passes each other and it looks weird and stuff. So that's what basically it also does. So you can use this one to create a simple nice looking chiseled edge. And these are the angular caps types. So in here, let me actually bring it back again. So do back and forth of stuff like that. So now let me bring it back again here, right? And I'll add a bit of rounding in here. And now the face, sometimes when you are doing deformation, you might want a lot of segment in here, and this is where you change it. So which right now it's set to n-gon, and n-gon is basically, I think, a polygon with more than 4 points basically. So n-gon can be several points binding to form one polygon. But now we can change it to different kinds of caps, right? So now we can change it to triangle, and you can see it tries to triangulate the faces so that we can have enough in there. You can also change it to quadrangles, and it tries to make it, quads as much as it can. But what we can use to do another one is this one, Delone or something, and that one basically also tries to calculate where there is would need a lot of points, and fills there with a lot of points, and where it doesn't need, you keep it simple like that. But another one is the regular grid, and the regular grid tries to give a uniform grid all around. And now if we come in here, you can see you have some small arrow there. You can click and open it, and you can actually increase it and decrease it, right? So if you set it to like say 4, and now you can see it's more of triangles. You can see quads dominated. So now I try to give us a lot of quads as it can, right? But if you see at the edges, they are still not like corresponding with the caps, and that's where we can come back into our interpolation point, and now change it to something like subdivide or natural or anything. But subdivide is usually the best one. So you can also set this one, because you set this thing to 4, you can set this one to like say 4 to try to match it a little bit. And now we have like an evenly spaced text. So this one, when you deform it, will look a little bit cleaner than the regular. So let's go back to the caps again. And this is basically the font and stuff like that. Also, one thing I didn't talk about is if you go back to the caps, you see it's now set to both caps, right? So everything I do to the front, everything I do happens both to the front and back, right? So if I see the rounding, if I move it, you can see the two are all, it's affecting the two. But I can separate it. If I want it to happen just one face, I can just separate caps, and I can see it's now affecting only the face, right? You see what's going on. So it's now affecting the face. So if I don't want that, I can actually where do you actually do that? So end bevel, start bevel. So this is the start bevel. I can take it off, and I'll come to the end rather, and I'll be doing to the back side as well. So that's basically most about the MoText. Now the reason why we talked about, it's not to explain all these things, but main reason why is because it's a MoText, it can be affected by Mograph effectors, right? So let me actually come to the object tab, and now I am writing the pixel again. Maybe I'll add the affair. And now we have our pixel affair text in here. Let's assume this is what we want. We can start adding effectors to it. So if I should select our text and come to our Mograph effectors, I can come in here and now I can add a plane effect, and you can see it's moved the text up. Actually, I think I got the spelling of the pixel wrong, so I can come into the text and make it PI. Yeah, so I can come into now the Mograph. You can see the effector is affecting it basically. So if I come to our parameters and now, or like let's say fields, and I add linear field, and see now we can use the linear field to get it to affect it. So we can probably set it to scale -1, and now we can use the linear field to write it on, right? So that's why that I'm using, so you can use effectors on it. So that's why the text object is also a Mograph object. Now one thing I want to explain is that when you come to, we have when you add our Mograph effectors to the text, automatically it adds it to the letters. So now it affects every individual letter, right? So for instance, let me actually go in here to the text object and add a bit more. Alright, so let me actually separate the pixel from the affair. So pixel affair is great to be just some random text in here, right? And now you can see, let me go back, my plane effector is affecting it every individual letter, but maybe we want to affect every individual word. So we can, instead of coming to our text object and in our letters, instead of letting our effectors affect the letters, we can take it off, and so we want it to affect each word. So with the word tab selected, we can drag our effector in here, and now everything we do, if I select my linear field, for now you see it's affecting it word by word, right? It's not affecting it like affecting it word by word. Same applies if you come, maybe want it to affect it line by line, you can say okay, I don't want it to affect it the line, so I'll check this off and I'll come to line. I'll drag my plane in here and I'll say, let me change the axis of the plane. So now if I hit, you can see it affecting it line by line as well. So that's basically all about the text object. Aside that, in the text object, let me come back and clear all these things and go back to my lines. I'll take this off and I'll go back to maybe the letter if in case you need it. So aside that, the other thing is that in the Cinema 4D, all these caps and stuff have their own selections, right? So if I come to after the cap, you have selection, and now we have the shell. So the shell is basically the middle part. So if I should come in here and create a material, make it like say red, I'll create another one. Now make this one say yellow, create another one, I'll make this blue, right? And probably, yeah, for now it's cool. So now if I should add my material to the text, right, and in the material selection, if I drag in the shell part, you can see now it's affecting just the middle part of the text, right? So if I can go ahead and add the yellow to it, and in the material, what we can do is we can actually type in here the part we want it to affect. So if I type in C, capital C1, automatically the yellow will affect just the face for you. And if I change the capital C to, and see it will affect just the back. So if you turn out, you can see it's just affecting the back, right? And if you say R, capital R, let me actually use the red one to do that. And let me go into the text, come to caps, and I'll say not separate the bevel, so everything, yeah, let me bring it back here. So in the red, if I say capital R1, and R basically you use it to stand for rounding, and I can see affecting just the rounding one. And if you want it affect the two, then it means you have to actually create another copy of this one and change it to 2, and now you can see it affecting this part as well. But all this thing in here, you probably sometimes might want to use something else on it, maybe a deformer or something else. So you can come to the selection, and now you can check. You can see it has its name here, the shell, the C1, C2, R1, R2, and all of that. And this one for edge selections and stuff like that. So you can also use it. This one not necessarily for textures, but you can use it for deformers and probably particle everything that you want to do. So those are basically about the selection tab. So that's all about the Cinema 4D text objects, and I hope you enjoyed it.